politics. I think we can also see her interest in modes of sociality, the salon, in Rachel Varnhagen, the Jewish army among armies, the federated solution for the Middle East, or indeed in the American Revolution. There are questions of mid-sign or collaboration, concerted action, which she'll call plurality, that are not modeled on Marxism, but also clearly are not part of a tradition of liberal individualism. I think we can also see the relation to Heidegger, not just the romantic, intimate one, as interesting as that may be for some, but also really an interesting intellectual crisis, which had to do with how to think about relations with others. She established distance from his view clearly, but also tried to rethink some of the basic questions he formulated, the questions of being with, but also the question of thinking. So what I want to suggest to you is that this notion, what I'm calling her social ontology, or her account of what it is to be with others, the kind of being that we are that is with others, how essential do we take this social ontology to be? Is there thinking that can actually happen alone? Does thinking ever happen alone? Or is it always with others, at least implicitly? And I hope to show you that I think she actually finds herself in something of a conundrum when she approaches that question. If I think, do I think without the implicit company of others? Am I a social being in the moment of thinking? Now, she's not exactly she doesn't have a linguistic idea of thinking in the way that you would find, say, in the work of Jacques Lacan or others. Lacan says that my soliloquy, even when I talk to myself or I think with myself, it takes the form of a language or a mode of address. And if it takes the form of a language or a mode of address, it's already social. It's already, there is some other there. There is some other there implicitly in any language I use, because no one uses language all alone. All language based on social convention or contract or implies the other, even if there is no literal other there. Did you want to interrupt me back there? Yeah.
Would you see that as a distinction between contemplation and thinking?
Would I see it as a distinction? But
thinking, like the language, as conversation, whether it's between yourself and yourself or with somebody else, that could be said to be contemplation and a collaboration of thought, as opposed to thinking, which would be an individual sort of repetition of something that was previously thought in relation to something else.
I know what you're saying. Well, I have two different thoughts about that. I don't know if they're contemplative or thinking. My thoughts. Arendt herself, okay, if I'm going to be a good teacher, okay, here's the good teacher. Arendt herself makes a distinction between the vita contemplativa and the vita activa, right? So, for her, the vita contemplativa includes philosophy, includes thinking. So, I'm not sure she would distinguish contemplation and thinking. But if we think about thinking, it's not that I'm having thoughts that others have had, or that I'm having thoughts in an explicit dialogue with this or that other I've met. It's that to think at all is to think according to certain kinds of structures or certain kinds of communicable conventions. Even if I'm just communicating with myself, I'm participating in a set of structures or conventions, depending on your point of view, that exceed me, that are part of a broader world of communication or part of a broader world of communicability. So So thinking would always presume a form that does not just belong to me, that belongs to others. It may be that what I think, or where I think, or even if we can talk about the substance of my thought, is not exactly replicable, but we couldn't call it thinking and we couldn't call it thought unless it took form in some way. And if it takes form in some way, there's a shareability. There's a replicability of form. And it's at that level that we are social, even when we're thinking of no one and when we're thinking about something that no one else has ever thought. If we call it thought, it has some kind of form, because I must be able to think with myself. So I'm already dual. I'm already dual, or something is communicable from me to me. And if I'm already in the mode of communicability, then I've exceeded my absolute idiosyncratic singularity. Well, I can even go further than that, but we're not going to do it. Yeah.
I can't remember if it was Derrida quoting Levinas, or it was in the Judith. He says, that every gesture is always to another, and I think it's a great little shorthand.
Yes. Well, and I think Lacan is the same when he talks about the soliloquy as always being in the presence of the other, or in reference to the other. That's absolutely right. And I think the mode of address became more and more important for Derrida as he reconsidered these issues. That's true. In a way, I'm not sure there could be thinking that was outside the mode of address, even if there's no other there in the literal sense. So that's one big question. She's developed this sociality, has very explicit political forms. They change over time. And yet this being with, this mode of sociality that I'm thinking about, also turns out to be essential to thinking. One might say that, I break with sociality or social norms when I think, that my thinking has a kind of singularity that's not replicable. But we have to ask whether it's really useless to try to think without first thinking oneself as with others in some fundamental way. Indeed, am I an I without there being another? And if I am not an I without there being another, then my thinking is not mine alone. It's always implicitly in relation to another. If indeed this being with others turns out to be essential, not only to who I am, but how I think. So a kind of fancy way of putting that is ontology first and foremost social ontology, and is epistemology first and foremost social ontology. And my hunch is that for Arendt, the answer is yes for both. In other words, I cannot know anything, and I cannot be anything without, in some sense, at least implicitly being with others. And that my social existence is a precondition of who I am. And I don't want to say what I think, but maybe that I think. The thatness of my thinking. And this term social ontology, it doesn't need to be too much of an overwhelming term. If she's trying to think living with others, or what she'll come to call conditions of plurality, and if she's trying to think conditions of plurality where there is no cultural homogeneity, no single culture to which we belong, and where sameness cannot be presumed, in what way is she trying to think this? There might actually be something tragic or split in Arendt's theorization here. On the one hand, she's trying to conceptualize what it is to think with others where we cannot presume sameness, where we don't come from the same cultural background, or we cannot presume